excited to turn it over to Taylor and Nate. And
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor Harrell. I am a researcher and consultant, and also a doctoral student at University of San Diego in leadership studies. And I really have a passion for doing consulting work and research work for social justice organizations. So you can imagine my excitement when I connected with Karen about this organization and really Humankind's mission to acknowledge that we have this really robust, diverse community in San Diego, and we want to figure out how to make it more connected so that we can really make a meaningful impact in this community. So like Karen said, I've been poring over your videos, and I feel like I know a lot of you, seeing familiar faces just in your stories, and I'm really excited to share with you what we found. So the nature of this research is that you know, in all the stories, you all are conveying a lot of layers of meaning. And these table plots right here convey a lot of the preliminary things that you all have extracted from your own stories. And then I've applied sort of a more analytical lens to really dig into what's underneath some of the more predictable layers. So first though, we need to figure out what questions we're trying to answer. So we're going to focus on these two today. There were a lot of questions on that sheet, but really these two questions capture the heart of what your stories have told us about what it means to connect and what we can do with those connections. So first is, what is at the core of people's capacity to connect across boundaries? Question number one. And number two, what conditions make these connections possible? So that's really what you're dealing with, what we're dealing with today. So keep those in mind. So if I show you this short list, keeping those questions in mind, and if I offered you this is the short list of the answers, who's surprised? Open-mindedness, compassion, courage, finding similarities, right? All across these, you can see these words here. And this is a yes and. Yes, these things are definitely there. However, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the very top layer of the story, because there are actually some conditions that come before these things that your stories told me that are actually more important in making these connections happen. They're a little bit messier to talk about. And those things are uncertainty, our struggle, our fear, our acknowledging our differences. And so I've arranged them underneath these more positive, approachable qualities and conditions, because these are actually the things that precede, come before these really feel-good qualities that we're talking about, right, that are on our posters. So let's dig a little bit deeper into what these mean. So the first thing, for the vast majority, now I'll be speaking in generalizations, you may have told a story that doesn't necessarily connect with all four of those things, but my guess is that you'll find some common themes in what I'm talking about. At least one, I'm guessing, I'm pretty sure. So the first thing is that these connections occurred in context of uncertainty. Many of you are going into environments, into homes, into countries, into new experiences, a new school, working at the Monarch School, or a home in Turkey. I'm pointing at a lot of you because I know these stories, where you were unsure of what to expect. And what do we do when we're uncertain? Well, a lot of us have a lot of different reactions to that. Some of us are more comfortable with uncertainty. Others of us tend to fear that uncertainty. Now, those are individual differences, and I'll talk about some things that actually impact our propensity to approach these situations, but definitely uncertainty was there. Also, for many of you going through these situations in your lives, when asked the question, what else is going on? And it was sort of in the background, it was like, well, my life was falling apart. I just lost my job, I got a divorce, or my father's been really sick, or I completely moved to a new country. Something else in our lives, in your lives, where there's some sort of a struggle. And whenever we feel uncertain, and whenever there's a lot of struggle, especially loss, we begin to experience this breakdown, the shaking of our identity. Aspects of our identity become a little bit less tightly woven together. Okay? And so when we are unsure, when we're uncertain, and when our identity becomes a little bit threatened, what happens to us? We become hypersensitive to our environment, meaning that we're a little more aware of what's going on outside of us rather than just plow through our normal day-to-day life. So we're a little more aware, perhaps a little more open to these connections. So how do uncertainty and suffering elicit open-mindedness and compassion? Good question. So, like I said, whenever many of you, either you yourself were suffering or you witnessed that someone else was in a tough spot. I think, Allison, you mentioned you saw a homeless man, right? And some other people witnessed, they saw some real suffering in an earthquake in Nepal and some other things. Whether you were the one that was suffering or the other person, maybe a new person in a new environment, our capacity as humans and our desire to empathize is what allows us to recognize that suffering. And whenever we see people suffering or whenever we're suffering ourselves, the desire to alleviate that isolation, the desire to want to connect with someone else becomes so strong that we show compassion, either others show compassion to us, we elicit that response from other people, so they want to connect. It was like, I'm in a new school, I had a new job, and this person really saw I was struggling, so they reached out to me, right? So, and then this open-mindedness, whenever you are a little bit uncertain, and like I said, your identity is just kind of unclear at this point, you become a little more open-minded to possibilities because there's this sort of question mark in your life. Like, where am I going? What am I doing? And so it begins to open you up to possibilities. Now, there's this aspect, I can see courage on almost every single one of these things. But in order to have courage, you have to have fear first. There has to be something that causes you to want to act with courage. So, there's this aspect in a lot of your stories that there was a fear, either when you came in contact with the other or whenever you began to realize that, my life isn't going the way that I wanted to, I'm scared, I don't know what to do. This was a quote from one of the interviews. At first it felt really scary. There was actually a lot of judgment inside of me. I felt like there was no way I could relate to them, but because they were willing to share their story, I was actually willing to let my guard down. So, there's this fear aspect, right, that we feel a lot of times whenever we're thinking about connecting with another person. So then what makes the transition from fear to courage possible? Right? And whenever we have this fear, and then I talked about when we're suffering, we have this desire to connect, to alleviate our suffering. Whenever we have a little bit more of a desire to connect, to belong with other human beings, we show courage to overcome that fear. To overcome that fear of the potential bad that could happen in that connection. And so, whenever we have the courage to connect, then that's when the vulnerability happens. That's when the story sharing happens. And not just tell me a story about a time in your life when, tell me your story, and your story, and your story. I want to know what it's like to be you. What it's like, what you struggled with, what your failures are, what your triumphs are. And it's in this vulnerability that we really start to create the trust. When you create trust in your relationships, then they can start to withstand differences. They can start to withstand the things that may cause us to bump up against one another. But it's this willingness to be vulnerable, to share our stories, and all of our stories, not just the good stuff, but all the stuff that comes along with it, all the struggle, that builds that foundation of trust. Now, the important thing about sharing vulnerability is that, yes, it builds trust, which I've talked about, but it also equalizes the power dynamics. So, all of you know that power dynamics, whether visible in your organizations or invisible in our society, these power dynamics exist. And they exist based upon how old you are, what color your skin is, what country you come from, if you're a man or a woman, and they've placed you in these areas in society, and whether we like to or not, they exist for sure. Whenever you start to connect with someone on a personal level, to share your story with them and to be vulnerable, then you begin to equalize the playing field, at least between you and them, so some authentic communication can occur. Which brings me to my last point. So, yes, it is true, in your stories, many of you had at least one element of connection to these people, to the people that you were connecting with. Whether you lived in the same area, you were part of the same organizational event, you had a similar race background, whatever it was, there was generally one thing that was recognized that, yeah, we kind of jive on that level. However, when asked, what are the things that make these connections possible, and what do we need to do to create more of these connections? Across the board, people are saying, I want to know that my differences are valued and honored. I want to know that people see me in all that I am. And so participants are stressing that it's not just us finding all the ways in which we're similar, but all of the ways in which we're different, and embracing all of that. And that's really, I think, the essence of what it means to be human, is the light and the shadow, embracing the similarities and the differences. And I think one of these quotes was really impactful to me in noting not just acknowledging differences because it makes it feel warm and fuzzy, but because it can actually create change in the structures that we have in our society. And I'll read this to you. So acknowledging these differences is the critical first step, not the only step, the first step in making change possible. This was said actually by an older white woman, and she said, that's the narrative of the dominant culture. People want to ignore and dismiss the experiences of others because it's uncomfortable to them. So to me, ignoring the experience of someone being racist or not having justice is disrespectful. And the dominant culture says, let's just move forward, let's not talk about that. Instead of saying what's happening and seeing if there's an issue that we can get behind and help change. There's so much meaningful discussion that needs to happen. And people were saying across the board that humankind is where these conversations are happening. They said we need to have more places like this that are nurturing these conversations and that are making this possible for people to connect, bringing people together across all of these different communities. And so humankind is really at the forefront of making this happen. Yes, acknowledging our differences, like I said, is the first step. But humankind is doing all of this research so that we can figure out how in the heck can we make a difference with this. It can't just stop at these conversations about telling our stories. It's got to move past that. And your stories are calling for more spaces and places that we can connect. Absolutely. But we can't stop here. So we have to take our understanding and move that into action, so that our network of connections can really inspire not just individual realization of our goals, but a collective realization of all of our purposes. And so that was a very cognitive explanation of all this research. But I really, and Nate and I really wanted to give you the felt experience of what his authentic story, his life experiences, have offered in a more creative expression, so that you could really feel the light and dark and all of what it feels like to be here.
Thank you, Taylor. How many of us have been stereotyped before? Show of hands. Okay? Name some of those stereotypes. Okay?
Black people like chicken.
Black people like chicken, of course.
Dumb blonde.
Okay? Dumb blonde. All blondes are dumb.
Rich white boy.
Of course. Right? What does that mean? What other stereotypes?
Arrogant American.
Arrogant American. Okay?
White and educated.
What?
Well,
White
actually,
and educated.
A white and educated. Okay?
they thought I want something to drink. I had a beer.
Okay. Aren't all these stereotypes true?
No.
My question is, how many of us have stereotyped someone before? So aren't all these stereotypes true? Think about it. Okay? Stereotypes are a major problem in society today. Prejudgments and false rumors conflict our world as individuals take a soul and grab it, take a soul and stab it, take a soul and trap it in a type of stereo. May I offend? Yes. Yes, 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 I'm skinny, yes, I'm fat, yes, I'm white, yes, I'm black, yes, I'm this, yes, I'm that. No, go, because I'm that type of stereo that booms all the time. I'm that type of stereo that speaks to your mind. I'm the stereotype to the eyes that are blind. Because I'm black, I must carry a gun. Because I'm black, I must be a fatherless son. Because I'm Mexican, I must live by none. Because I'm Mexican, I must get pregnant before I turn 21. Because I'm not wealthy, I must live like a bum. Because I didn't get a 2400 on the SAT, I must be dumb. I'm cocky by the way I chew my gum. I'm ignorant because my household income. You judge me with the second finger for my thumb. You don't know me or what my life will become. I'm living my life to the beat of my own drum, so beat on yours and don't beat on mine, cuz I'm that type of stereo that booms all the time. I'm that type of stereo that speaks to your mind. I'm the stereotype to the eyes that are blind. I'm Asian, so I must get straight A's. I hang out with a lot of girls, so I must be gay. I'm liberal, so I must be gay. Because I'm too feminine to be a man, I must be gay. I'm a theater thespian, so I must be gay. I must be a dyke with a harsh word. But if I am, who are you to judge me of what my life is like? How can your judgments be right? Or maybe they are psycho. I'm Native American, single swimming on the fire, screaming like a savage. I'm a guy, so sexy, gotta have it. I'm black, I see your purse, I have to attack it. I'm Afghan, I see your plane, I have to hijack it. I'm conscious because I'm wearing varsity jackets. I must be ghetto because my poetry's rapping. Dreads and braids, I must have AIDS. Diamond in my grave, I was shot 10 times to compete with the Bloods and Crip gang. Not meant to be strange with the stereotypical way. Cause my clothes are big a little bits. I'm a slut that's ready to have big. I'm aged for a little. False judgments make me sick. Cause I'm that type of stereo that booms all the time. I'm the type of stereo that speaks to your mind. I'm the stereotype to the eyes that are blind. I'm a redneck, so I love NASCAR. I'm Cuban, so I love rolling cigars. I'm rich and white, so I love birdies and paws. I'm an immigrant, so I speak like who I are. I'm a nerd, so I can find symbolism in Harry Potter's scar. I'm blonde, so I question what's his Mars and how can the planet Milky Way fit in a candy bar? Blacks play basketball because they can run, shoot, and steal. Russians drink vodka and love to kill. The skate crew are all on drug bills. And the old man who is trying to cop a feel. This is not real. False judgments make me ill because I'm that type of stereo that booms all the time. I'm that type of stereo that speaks to your mind. I'm the stereotype to the eyes that are blind. Humankind, I speak for new communication. If not, the die starvation lane, the dust of cremation. We live in a world that revolves in rotation where too spread out. We need a combination. Learn from different brothers and sisters in conversation for different stylations, for different affiliations, for different languages, for different translations. We come from one foundation, but from different backgrounds of immigration and plantation. Seek out new information instead of using false facts as humiliation. Because I'm the type of stereo that booms all the time. I'm the type of stereo that speaks to your mind. We all are stereotypes to the eyes that are blind. I want you to now think about an individual who's separate, opposite, or different than you. I want you to put yourself in their shoes, in a community that you've never been to. I want you to acknowledge your privilege. I want you to see your life. And I want you to realize that outside of who you really are, there's somebody else who's been stereotyped, and you may be the one who stereotyped them. You may be the one afraid to go into that neighborhood because it's scary. But you never really lived in that neighborhood, so you really don't understand what it's really like. Just as you're stereotyping them, they're stereotyping you. And if we can break free from these stereotypes, you can see that we are more alike. Life, death, and the pursuit of purpose. Up and down lately, I've been feeling worthless. Somebody help me out, I've been soul searching for the answer to my misery, but nothing's working. Who am I? Far from perfect. A soul misunderstood the pain and hurting yourself from like a dream chasing, body racing, fear facing emotions. I rose up, I chose up, I'm finally in focus. Picture that, visionary, extraordinary gifts. No more doubts or worries of where my true potential is. I cried myself to sleep, I'm afraid of being worthless. I'm afraid if we keep hoping for change, I'm afraid we'll still be hoping. I rose up, I chose up, I'm finally in focus. Picture that. Instagram of what I'm really smoking. A marijuana for the marathon, steady pace, I keep going. Back and forth with my emotions. Afraid of who I am and am I really worth it? Life, death, and the pursuit of purpose. Up and down lately, I've been feeling worthless. Somebody help me out, I've been soul searching. Somebody help me out, I've been soul searching. I rose up, I chose up, I'm finally in focus. I'm the greatest, and I know that. I'm the greatest, and I own that. Somebody help me out from going back and forth. I'm a walking contradiction. I'm realistic fiction. I'm Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, or is that one the same? I'm black and criminal. I'm a humble narcissist. I'm a motivated pessimist, or is that one the same? According to All Lives Matter verse, Black Lives Matter verse, whose life matters? Aren't we all the same? Bunch of he say, she say, bunch of they say, we say, bunch of hoopla and confusion while things never change. Victim mentalities with victor pursuits. Keynote speeches with funeral suits. If I speak, it'll kill me. They don't really want the truth. But who I am is really you and me. I'm your reflection. What's a part of me is a part of you. That's what makes you special, too. Life, death, and the pursuit of purpose. Up and down lately, I've been feeling worthless. Somebody help me out, I've been soul searching. Somebody help me out, I've been soul searching. I rose up, I chose up, I'm finally in focus. I'm the greatest, and I know that. I'm the greatest, and I own that. Somebody help me out from going back and forth. I'm speaking to you. Our tombstone holds our birthday, our death date, and that little dash in between. That I'm steady hanging on, trying to figure out what life really means. Will I live my life and tell my story, or live with others' expectations of me? Tell your story before they do. And truly, be. Life, death, and the pursuit of purpose. Up and down, we were feeling worthless. You helped me out. We went soul searching. You helped me out. We went soul searching. We rose up. We chose up. We're finally in focus. We're the greatest, and we know that. We're the greatest, and we own that. Somebody help us out from going back and forth.